What you are watching now was never intended as a movie. We were travelling from Modica in the mountains in South Eastern Sicily to Palermo in northwest Sicily in a bus, or as they call it in this part of the world, Pullman. I was using, from the passenger seat, while Helen was using her camera, I was using the iPhone just to take some images of what were extraordinary landscapes with clouds and the juncture between land and sky. We had travelled through some very steep country, through the spectacular town of Ragusa. We had come on through other towns. We had seen extensive farming of sheep and wheat, and a fascinating image, I think it was in Victoria in the earlier part of the trip, where there were two shepherds with an extensive flock of sheep, and they were looking away from this very large crowd of sheep who were on a block in an urban area, and they were each looking away, talking on their mobile phones. At first I thought of it was, gosh, they bring the sheep right into the urban area. And then looking at these gentlemen in their traditional clothes, you had to say the urban areas have come out to the sheep places, and how interesting it is to see in terms of cultural transfer that they had absorbed the use of the phone into enhancing their traditional life. So in this, we have gone through some areas of wheat cropping into some more mountainous areas. There has been rain recently, I think, in this film, before the day of our travel. Also, as we go along, it moves out of the broader country and into steeper country where we began to see snow in the distance. That became quite elusive, trying to take the picture of snow, because the snow was always just over the first hill, and the snow tended also to be behind a bank of clouds. One of the most fascinating things you will have been noticing is that with the way the iPhone camera works, firstly, it's a pinhole camera with quite a wide angle of view, but somehow or other, in the way the shutter operates, objects which are near, when you are racing past them, are distorted to the extent of being pulled in a counterclockwise direction. This is something about the way the shutter works, I think, and just adds an extra interesting sense of velocity of racing along. I have left here, I think, apart from the occasional knee or floor shot, virtually every photo I took. I really didn't have any idea that it was going to become a film. That came to me today in Palermo, the next day. I thought at one point that I might take some of them and put them into an extremely wide HTML page using Dreamweaver, which I have done before. But having recently discovered some of the simple ways of using iMovie, I suddenly realized that I could put them all into iMovie. I set them initially with a 1.2 second period for showing each picture. That was just too racy altogether, although many of the pictures, perhaps majority, are still at the 1.2 second length of film. Also, Apple, being Apple, defaulted the pictures into what it calls the Ken Burns effect, which is that effect when you zoom from one part of the picture up to another. This was not terribly satisfactory. You see it going by there now. It's useful occasionally, but it tends much of the time to be disruptive unless there's some particular point you want to make. So I went from that to showing the whole picture even though it means on the side of the screen you have some measure of black. This also meant in particular where I had taken photos in portrait mode, which is, where is it? There you see, like that. It was possible to show the whole picture. Then when there were pictures like some of these more interesting scenes, I allowed the camera to roll on for a more extensive period of time so that you could gallop through this and that picture, but spend a little more time dwelling on something a little more interesting, or use those Ken Burns effects to do something interesting too with the blurry landscape. There's a little rain on the window now. We've gone into the mountains. There's a temperature gauge up the front which has taken us from about 14 down to about 10 degrees going up through these mountains. Some of the effects, I must say, of the curtains being very twisted arise not from the lens but from the driver behind the camera. When you press to take the photo on the iPhoto, it's putting a warm finger onto a particular part of the glass back, and it's actually when you remove the finger that the photo is taken. And it can be quite difficult taking your finger away without actually giving the camera a bit of a jolt. The other thing about taking the picture is that, as with many older digital cameras, there is an interval between when you press or remove the finger for taking the image and when actually the photo takes place. See here now we've come into vegetable country in the middle of this mountainous area. Well, when I say mountainous area, I get it. Oh, there's the sea. We have now come out of the mountainous area and we've arrived at the sea. That was quite unexpected. We had no idea that we would reach the sea, that we would approach Palermo along the coast from the east. So there I was caught again in putting this voiceover on. This then allows, with this manner of clicking and clicking, it allows me simply to show you the little bit of industry which is developed around this capital of Palermo. There's very little industry in Sicily, really. But just to give you the comprehensive view as you come along. And as you come along the coast here, I was looking particularly for the particularly interesting shaped mountains which are down the coast there towards the west, just before and just after Palermo. But meanwhile, you see there are eucalyptus trees along in this view too. The other thing that you'll notice when we see the sea a little more close up is that towards the beaches there is a fascinating gradation in the colour of the sea. We must be getting to that point fairly soon. Maybe here, coming here. There's an old olive tree. No, it's not in that picture. Running through a cutting, back out again. There you see the mountains down towards the west there. I seem to have been caught up with those and with the camera looking over the next seat in front to catch them. And there you see the colour of the sea in close. Look, if you want to dwell on a particular point, you can always just pause the movie, probably just by pressing the space bar in whatever you're using. Some of that fascinating race-by stuff I just was very pleased to retain. Here I am craning forward. Oh, look at that. That's the camera angled and moving while I take the picture. Through the window in front. We're about 3 or 4 seats back. Not far from Palermo, no. You see, the other thing that's happened is that the sun has come down. We left at about 1 in the afternoon and we were arriving just after 5. And the sun is now at my back as I'm taking these pictures, and you can see that has an effect in the sharpness of the light on the photos. intensity also of shadows. The driver, I must say, has been scootling us along. We in the end arrive early. He clearly is wanting to get the trip done and go wherever drivers go at the end of the day. He would seem to have made significant preparations for the end of the day, because while quite clearly he drove us very well and swiftly and gently without any particular violence in the driving, he spent at least a third of the trip chatting on the phone. And while he was, as we say, driving hands-free, he was actually holding the phone against his ear. Now look, we're into town and there are some pretty apartment buildings there. There's also a gorgeous afternoon light, a bit of traffic building up here, and it's evident that the road does not enter on some freeway or something, but as in the country, coming across country, it's all basic narrow streets. So it is here, and you have these that was a gorgeous place to look at, a bit of a wreckers centre. We enjoy those. That there is still a lot of wreckage about, as one Italian friend at lunch the other day observed. It's strange in Palermo that you still seem to have the bomb craters from World War II looking next to other things. There's the station we just saw, and we're coming round a loop, past in a moment a persistent dog determined to eat something off the road right in front of the bus, until we then pull up back around near the station again. There's this dog coming in a moment now. So it's interesting when something a block away there is just unwilling to move anywhere. So we had to squeeze through this gap and come to a halt by the station. That's all, folks. Hope you've enjoyed this little movie of our trip to Palermo.